Now, as much as I love Ryan Coogler, and I love him down, okay, respect to his wife, I love him down. I love his accent. I love how he carries himself. I love his mind. I love how he respects film. I love how he respects his actors and his love for Chad and Michael. I love that man down, okay? However, the movie to me, as an avid moviegoer and a self-proclaimed film critic, I give this movie a strong. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Pretty Suited Podcast, where we discuss real topics through the lens of some of the most iconic people in our culture. I am your host, Lauren A. We're going to get straight to it this week. Instead of us going in the past, I have decided to talk about a movie that is literally the talk of the town right now. And y'all, over the weekend, I had the pleasure of seeing the new movie, Sinners, starring Michael B. Jordan, Delroy Lindo, Omar Benson Miller, Wunmi Osaku, Haley Steinfeld, and Lee Jun Lee. This movie was directed by the uber talented Ryan Coogler, who is literally becoming a legend before our eyes. One of the most talented directors of our generation. As you guys know, Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan has had an extensive history of working together. I believe this is the fifth movie that they've done together, starting from Fruitvale Station back in like 2018 to Creed, of course, Black Panther, the first Black Panther, and then now we have Sinners. So this movie is definitely a left from what Ryan Coogler normally does, as we know him for the big blockbuster films that are, usually have some action in it, some fighting scenes in it. This was a little bit different. I did go see it in IMAX, and that in itself was an experience because, for one, I haven't seen an IMAX movie in years. It wasn't a movie that I really felt was worthy to see in IMAX, but I have lately been seeing during the promotional run of this movie, Ryan Coogler really break down the aesthetics of how he wanted to construct this movie, whether it was the millimeter of film that they used, how he purposefully chose different shots to make sure that it accommodated the film, how he wanted it to kind of have a certain tone. So all those things really inspired me to want to go see it and in the format that he wanted it to be seen. And so I went to go see it in IMAX, and that movie theater that I was in on opening weekend, it was definitely packed. So the people came out and showed a lot of love to Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler for this movie. I mean, we all are fans of them. And I knew it was going to be packed, but people definitely showed out. And so me sitting down watching the film, I was already excited and anticipating what they was going to come up with. And so first I would like to say there's going to be some spoilers here, but not too much because I know that you guys want to see the movie, but I'm going to definitely spoil some things just because I'm a lover of film and I really wanted to break down some of the themes and messages behind this movie. It started off initially with just you getting to know the background of the characters. The scene of the boy just driving up to the church starts off the thing with a tone of like, okay, we understand that religion plays a part in this. We understand the conflict in this conversation between what's right and what's wrong. And so and I always felt like the Black church in itself was such a powerful aspect of the Black community and of Black American culture. And how we view things, how the faith was introduced to a lot of us, over here in this land, and just how the conflict between what is right and what's happening to us always kind of overshadowed our experiences here. And so just in a sense, starting the movie off with just such a strong visual, I thought was very, it set the tone for the rest of the movie. And then so we see the young gentleman hang out with his cousins, the twins of Michael B. Jordan, Smoke and Stack. Michael B. Jordan, we know, is extremely talented. Unfortunately, it seems like he always got a bad rep of the type of movies that he portrayed, where it more so leaned towards his looks or his athletic ability or whatever the case may be versus his actual acting talent. I like to be the one to say this movie dispelled that. I don't know if Michael B. Jordan said, you know what, y'all want to talk trash about me and my acting performance? Watch this, okay? Watch this, because he definitely showcased a range that we've never quite seen in Michael B. Jordan in this movie. And I don't know if it was he was inspired just by the genre, just was inspired by the back kind of work that him and Ryan Coogler did, because Ryan Coogler mentioned that he brought in a set of twins, which were his friends, who also made films, and they kind of gave them the rundown on how twins act, because that's a talent within itself. When you have someone, who's literally your body double for your whole life, like you move and you navigate the world in a different way. And so in order for the movie not to come across like so cheesy and, disconnected, I'm pretty sure that input from them really helped Michael as he was able to kind of showcase, the difference between Smoke and Stack and how they were connected as brothers. And so I really appreciated that, just how like they moved around each other, all the things. And you really got a chance to see the personalities of Smoke and Stack from the beginning. Like aside from the color changes that they had, you got to see the personality. For me, if I could have Smoke and Stack together, that would be chef's kiss. Like, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about their personalities together. But like, because Smoke had this kind of reserved, like, quiet, assassin look to him, and how he navigated. He was very smart. He was very like, he moved strategically. Like, I really liked that about him. Like, meanwhile, Stack had this playful kind of personality that you could tell was funny. He was, a life of a party type thing. And so blending them together, I thought would be the perfect man. But separately, I thought Michael B. Jordan did a good job of like portraying the differences between the two. And so you see that, this was 30 something, like in the 30s. And so we're talking about post slavery, but a large part of the South still had Jim Crow attached to it. So just the existence of, Black people and what we had to do for a living, how, they're still picking cotton, literally still picking cotton and trying to make a living for themselves out there. That just kind of kept poverty, over that small town. And so these gentlemen coming from that small town, moving to Chicago, seeing the fast life on how they moved up there, and then coming back down here to open up a juke joint. I feel like that is the case for a lot of people and a lot of our ancestors, like how they, were able to be exposed to a life outside of just the small town that they were in, prompted them to, want to open businesses, want to, change the lives of people in their community. And so I feel like the juke joint in itself was a symbol of aspiration, a symbol of wanting to do more and want more, and also a symbol of a place where we can congregate to get away from the poverty and conditions of how we were living. And so, because honestly and truly, like being in the South and during that time where you had to look over your shoulder every 5 minutes because you had, racist whites and other ethnicities after you and wanting to see you fail and killing you and all the things that they were doing back then for no apparent reason, that would take a toll on anybody's mental health. That would take a toll on anybody's just well-being. And so having a place where, you're not judged, where you're able to congregate and have a good time outside of the pressures and the disparities that's going on in the world for you and your people, I thought that was great. And that's an origin story for a lot of the things in our community, is an escape from the terrible conditions that we were going through. So them being able to afford to purchase this, now that, we don't know exactly what happened in Chicago to allow them to be able to purchase this, but they were able to do so. I want to talk about the young cousin. The young cousin was played by Miles Canton, and I've never heard of this gentleman before, but I would like to say that this young man played that part, because we all have a cousin or a friend or somebody who was a PK. When I say PK, I mean preacher's kid. And preacher's kids usually get a bad rep because they have a desire to rebel against the stronghold and restrictions that being a preacher's kid was all about. Like, if you had a pastor as a mother as a pastor or a father as a pastor, you had a different set of rules on how you were expected to live. And with that much, I guess, restriction, a lot of kids end up just saying, you know what, Bunkin, I'm gonna do the complete opposite. I want to live my life outside of what you've done for me, and just, I don't want no parts. And a lot of them do. And so he embodied that. He embodied somebody who was conflicted with the decisions that he was making, because he felt like he wanted to prove his parents wrong and do what he loved, but then at the same time he had that foundational knowledge and guilt of living a worldly life as opposed to living a faith-filled one and a Christian one. And so he embodied that. His voice was absolutely amazing. Somebody take me. As soon as he picked up that guitar and was singing, and Stack was like, hold on, wait, now we finna make some money. I had the same sentiments. I was like, oh goodness, his voice was so soulful. Now, I don't know if that was his real voice. If that's his real voice, we need to get that man a record deal. Because you talking about, black people getting back into the space of country. We need to talk about black people getting back into the blues and how that was such a prominent genre that was, something that was another thing to escape the hardships that we were facing. Like Delroy embodied the character of just a blues player who was just, of course, an alcoholic, but then also somebody who's seen so much that they couldn't help but sing the blues. They just couldn't help it. And so I loved his character. Delroy was absolutely hilarious in the movie, but then he also reminded me of an old uncle that just saw a lot of things and was just tired. The bottle was his escape because he was just so tired. And so, bringing them together to sing in this juke joint, it brought everybody in. It brought the whole town in. So they was having a good time. Let's get into the vampires. The vampires, how we were introduced was by the gentleman who just so happened to knock on the door of a Klansman and his wife and ended up turning them into vampires so that he can have, just a little gang to go run up on this young man that he has heard so much about. I love how Ryan Coogler portrayed the vampire character in this movie. Vampires as a hit or miss. A lot of times people can do the vampire and it come off real cheesy. It come off super cheesy, where it's like the fangs look like they don't fit in the mouth, or, there's no real origin story to them. So they just come out of nowhere, just start sucking blood. Like, okay, where did you come from? Or it's usually like almost in a zombie way where they turn into a vampire in some kind of like almost real, like they're dead type of thing. And so, or it's the complete opposite, and it's like a total like cheesy teeny bopper, super handsome vampire who, just likes to suck the blood of the innocent or the really pretty. It's like, okay, which way we going? So in this movie, I love the way he portrayed it, because he portrayed it as a guy who you could tell have some years on him. He was talking about how he was alive for centuries, and, he was an Irishman. You really don't see that too often as a vampire. And just being able to show a little bit of the folklore and the background of, the Irishman, and hearing the character of Preacher Boys music crossing the realms, because that is a thing, and that's in a lot of traditions. Native Americans, same thing. The Asians, same thing, where people who are born with a gift. And so him being able to hear Miles's music crossing the realms, he was like, oh, what's that? And he kind of like jumped into our realm and wanted to have him for himself. But in a sense, if you're aware of just, how things are, I feel like the vampire in this movie was a symbol for a lot of things. The vampire was not only, of course, just a vampire who wanted to, turn as much people as possible to have an army, but I feel like the vampire was a symbolism of the music industry, right? Where you have a set of people who may be outside of your culture coming in to profit and maximize off your talents, right? Because they're in love with it, or they're not in love with it, and they just see the value in it and just want to be able to exploit it, right? And then you also have, I feel, the ties to how other cultures feed off of the Black culture in totality, right? Appropriate in a sense, where we understand that this is special, this is cool, this is magical. And for you to be able to produce something so beautiful despite your circumstances, we got to see about that, right? And are ultimately inspired by it. And so I feel like this movie had so many different layers, and I can get into several, but they had so many different layers of this movie. But I think the gist of it and the common denominator of it is how our culture has transcended what we've been through. It has bloomed and blossomed despite what we have been through in this country. Because, of course, our history extends beyond our history in this country. But our culture bloomed and literally grew out of the concrete that is our experience in this country. And so I feel like, others seeing that light and wanting a piece of that light has been a detrimental piece. But with the help of knowing who we are and knowing how important it is, and then also having allies to be able to help protect the culture, I think is severely important. Speaking of allies, the Asian influence in this movie I thought was interesting. I thought it was interesting because I think that Ryan Coogler was purposeful in putting Asian people into this movie and how they were portrayed. I recently found out about some of the history and origin of the Chinese and other Asian ethnicities in America and how they were so prevalent in the South, specifically along the Mississippi Delta, that kind of like was that backbone of slavery, right? Or post-slavery. And so having the Asian people in our communities back then even was a testament to, for one, I'm pretty sure they weren't able to open up businesses and be, around and populate the white neighborhoods. So they found their home and their businesses and in the Black and brown neighborhoods. And so even back then, having them be there was interesting, because I'm actually glad that he portrayed that, because I feel like a lot of times that story isn't necessarily told, but we see the ramifications of their presence in the Black communities. Even the partnership that they had between each other as husband and wife, she was all about her family. She was about making sure her child was safe, making sure that we, enjoyed each other, made some money together. And the husband, he seemed like he was down for it as well. But of course, in the end, I wanted to shout at the girl. I wanted to shout at her. What was her name in the movie? I think her name was Grace in the movie. I wanted to shout at her. I was actually shouting at her when she invited those daggone vampires in. I wanted to just throw my shoe at her. And she was upset, of course, because her man is outside getting ready to get chewed up. Right? And then you have, her daughter at risk too, because they done left the girl alone. I don't even know where she is. And so we trying to fix. So she's like, okay, bunk it. I'm gonna go ahead and fight these people and go home to my daughter. Unfortunately, that came at the risk of everybody losing their life. So again, the emotion just overwhelmed her, and then now people losing their life. I wanted to slap her, but I get it. If my man is outside getting chewed up, and don't even know if I'm gonna go home to see my daughter, I want to make sure that I'm going down with a fight. I get it. But I definitely was mad at her. I know that this movie was unprecedented when it comes to what Ryan Coogler was able to negotiate. I heard that he was able to get a bag after 25 years. That movie is his. It is not necessarily the studio that produced it. It is his movie, so that means he gets the royalties from it. Like, that's unheard of. Most of the time, the studio who is putting this movie out, they own it in perpetuity. Like, they are always getting a bag. Ryan Coogler is going to own it 100% after 25 years, allegedly. I believe that was the deal. And then you also have, I'm pretty sure as far as like how much it costs versus how much it's ranking in opening weekend and then the subsequent weekends, he's going to get his money back 10 times over. So I'm proud of that man. I'm so proud of busting down doors and the ability to, go against the grain and open doors for people who coming behind him. Because I'm not saying that, the studios are going to do this all the time. But if you have somebody who has proved themselves time and time and again to be very successful and very good at what they do, why not get paid for it? I don't understand. I feel like, and that's with anything. You can be an Uber driver. If you've been the best Uber driver that's been Uber drivers, then you deserve a little bit more piece of the pie. Because that's just, I'm proving my worth. And I think that, in these times where people are starting to see, jobs getting cut, everything's getting cut, and all the hard work that people are putting into things are getting slashed, I feel like this was just absolutely amazing to see. And I feel like he deserved every piece of it because that man has been working hard and he's been really diligent about his craft and he's been able to kind of like open those doors. So shout out to him for that. Now I'm going to say this and don't hate me for it. I don't think that this movie was a 10 out of 10. Now, as much as I love Ryan Coogler, and I love him down, okay, respect to his wife, I love him down. I love his accent. I love how he carries himself. I love his mind. I love how he respects film. I love how he respects his actors and his love for Chad and Michael. I love that man down, okay? And I love Michael B. Jordan, so on and so forth. However, the movie to me, as an avid moviegoer and a self-proclaimed film critic, and who took a few film classes in college, my little aesthetics 101 class, I give this movie a strong 8.5 out of 10. And that's 8.5 out of 10 for these reasons: the impact, the execution, and the acting. So the location is the first thing. While I love how the movie was shot and the innovative way it was shot, if you pay attention, they didn't really spend too much money on the setting of the movie. There's really only like 3 or 4 scenes in this movie, like actual sets in this movie. Only about 3 or 4. So that in itself is like, oh, he the overhead was low. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it was literally only 3 or 4 sets in this movie. It really made me feel like more could have been done as far as location and how it was shot and how. I'm not saying that you had to like have several different locations, but I'm just saying, like, I feel like for this movie to have been a little bit bigger, it could have just had a little bit more as far as visuals and where it was done. I don't care if it was done, if you introduced maybe like another town, if you introduce maybe some scenes, like a canyon or something that just shows a little bit more of the landscape, I felt like that would have been a little bit bigger. The second thing I would say is I feel that some of the visual effects, like when the vampires were flying, I don't know, it just felt like a string was lifting the people off the ground. It didn't seem smooth. It didn't seem... So just little things like that, like the visual effects. The third thing that kind of took it down a little bit for me was the jump in how the first half and the second half was done. I feel like the first half, while they were setting up the scenes and the characters of the movie, it was done so in a way that was very on the nose. From the camera movements, the sets and the scenes and the dialogue and all that, like that was cool. But I felt like that part of the movie was done maybe at a different time, maybe in the beginning, when they didn't have all the budgets, and then like maybe a check came in, and then the second half was shot, because to me, I feel like the first half of the movie, it looked like it was done for another movie, and then the second half was Sinners. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I just feel like the gel between the two could have been done a lot better. And even sooner, I feel like the first half, a lot of it was character development, stuff like that. And then the second half was purely action, Sinners, gore, all the things. And I feel like the second part of the movie too was all of what was done in the trailer. So you really kind of got a feel of what the movie was going to be about based on the second half of the movie. And so it's not a bad thing. I think both were done well. I just think that the gel between the two halves could have been a little bit more seamless, and probably a little bit more sooner to introduce the topic of the vampire and so on and so forth. Maybe even a little bit more backstory about the vampire. That would have been pretty cool. But overall, I love the shots. I love the shots of the connectedness between African music and current hip hop music, and just, the Asian, like all the things that were kind of lumped in that room. It was a continuous shot for the most part. I just loved how he did that. I love any movie that has some kind of magical realism to it. I think that is just, it always brings a pizzazz to the movie. Like anytime you're introducing elements that's like, that shouldn't be there, or is that really there or not there? Like, I'm glad that he was opening his own range to be able to shoot a different genre like that. So I can't say enough about this movie. You guys, please go out and see it. I really, really enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to see it again. I want to run up the bag for Ryan and Michael. I want to make sure that these people feel supported. I want to make sure that we're putting out more original content. Because dang, how many times are we going to see Jurassic Park or freaking Disney live action? Like, how many times are we going to see the same movie over and over again? Please, for the love of God, filmmakers, come out with some original things. And in audiences, support those original movies. Because they're not going to make them if you don't support it. They know you're going to come out and see Iron Man 5. They know that. So, but if you're not coming out and seeing the original films, they're not going to really make them. So keep doing that. Keep going out and supporting. And I want the absolute best for these gentlemen and the rest of the cast too, because they did a phenomenal job as well. So anyways, go out and check that out. That is Sinners. It is currently in theaters. I'm pretty sure it'll be there for a while, because this movie is definitely getting the hype that it deserves. And so, but yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let me know which movies you like for me to review and react to. Until next time, you cannot manifest the life you feel like you don't deserve. So create the life that you want and look to the sky for grace. Bye-bye.